Okay, someone was curious what these libraries meant and what was available and what functions were there. And it's a little bit more complex. You have to know a lot more language, but at least let's take a look at it and see what's there. We're going to work with this DHT11 temperature sensor. And we're also going to work with a more reputable library, and those are usually ones that are done by Adafruit are pretty good, but ones that everybody are using. So the first thing is you have to make sure you get the correct DHT library. So I have the Arduino version up here and then running, and we're going to go to Sketch, and we're going to go to Include Library, and we're going to go to Manage Libraries. And when I go there, a window will come up, and if you're going to, someone using a sensor that someone else did, they're going to tell you what libraries you need. In this case, I know I need that DHT sensor library, and there might be a couple different options. I'm looking at the one from Adafruit, and you can see that one here, and you can see that I already have it installed. I, I could hit the install button. If I didn't, I could select the version. You've seen that already. So I got these DHT sensor libraries installed. The other thing to know about this with the details is you might want to look at the files that are involved with the sensor library itself. And if you go to File Preferences, you look at this sketchbook location and you get your file manager. Let me bring that up. If I can here, I'm going to go and do the File Explorer. Let me drag that down here onto the screen, and I'm going to pull this up a little bit so I can see it. So we're hunting for that directory. So when I go to my C drive and I go to the users directory and SCHRE, and then there should be a OneDrive directory in here like it says, and I go to documents and I go to Arduino. Once I finally get here, there'll be some other stuff you can sort of ignore that right now, but libraries is what we're interested in. So in that libraries directory, when I install libraries, they all go in here. And the one that I just installed, or the one that I've installed previously that we're working with, is called DHT. And I'm sorry, it's not called DHT, it's called DHT Sensor Library. This is from another software that I was working with. So when I come in here, you'll see a whole bunch of files. And you'll see some examples, and those examples are programs that end up after you install the library. They end up in the example section, and we're going to take a look at those very shortly. But these files down in here, especially the .h files, are of interest. Those are the higher level language that the person who wrote the library wrote the code in. So these dht.h file and this dht_u file, we're going to open those up to take a look at them real quickly. You might be sorry that we did that, and you might be sorry that you answered that question or asked that question, and you're going to get it sort of answered, not in great detail. But what I did was I prepared these ahead of time, and I opened these two files up. You can see here's the dht.h file, and here's dht_u. And if we scroll down through here, we find this is the code that someone wrote behind here and added all these features in here. So if you don't know what to do, if you understand the language a little bit more, you can see on line 67 here is they're defining a read temperature routine that you can use. They're defining a convert C to F function that you can use. All these things were created by the person who created the library for you. Now, when they do this very nicely, they also create an example file to show you how these are used, but they don't always tell you all the ones that are used. But if you look down through here, you can get an idea of all these functions that are available and written. Here's the DHT_u. Once again, I don't know that I'd have to do some studying a little bit to be able to explain all this code, but this has to do with object-oriented C code that's put in here to make all this stuff work. So you can find out some neat things that are available there. It's a little complicated, so you'd be taking a deep dive and studying that and looking at that for a while. So let me move that out of the way. And what we're going to do now is when I installed this software in here, you heard me say good libraries also put examples in here. And you will see that I have a lot of examples in here, but if I scroll down through here, it would show all of them. So DHT non-blocking is that other library that I installed to use the same sensor, but DHT sensor library also installed these two example programs that you can run. So I loaded both of these up. In the window that you see here is the DHT underbar unified underbar sensor from the examples file. And I'm going to download that to the Arduino Uno that I have connected. And while we're downloading it, we're going to take a look at another interesting thing here, and you have to get this right before you're there. And I'm going to bring up this the window for the serial port. But over here in the program, as you run down through here, you see this part that says slash uncomment the type of sensor in use. We have a DHT11 sensor, so I made sure that line was uncommented, and I commented the two sensors that I'm not using, the DHT22 and 21. These are commented out, and you might have to change that depending on what sensor you're using. I did that, and I did DHT11. So if I made this change, I'd have to download it again. I've already done it. So if you look down through here, and we look at the serial port, I'll move this over a little bit so we can see both at the same time. What we'll be able to see is the code that's running and the output that I get from that. And this will serve as an example for some of the functions that you can use with this sensor based on the libraries that you installed for it. These might not be the common commands, but they're definitely the ones that are available, because if these weren't defined in the library, they wouldn't work at all. So there is something called sensor.name, and it's called temperature sensor, and sensor version, and sensor max value and min value. These are all things that are stored in the sensor and read by using these functions that were defined in the library. And then these things print out on the screen. And as I get down here, by the way, these only happen once, so I'd have to scroll up on my window to see where that first started out and make sure which command is giving me which information. So you can see up here, DHT unified sensor example is here, and this temperature sensor line of code corresponds with this printout, and sensor name is the sensor type is gotten or read from the sensor itself by sensor.name. So these are the things that happen. Down here, now it would be running in a loop. If I take and leave the auto scroll on again, you can see it's doing temperature and humidity, and it's using these functions from the library that was installed. And these example programs are meant to show you how to work with it. They might not include all the sensors or the all the functions that are defined in the library. So sometimes you have to dig a little bit, but for the most part, if you have someone that does a good job, they're going to show you all those. So let me get the other example program. Once again, this is just me going File, Examples, and looking for what was installed by the library. And in this case, we're going to get DHT tester. Once again, I had to scroll down through here and read the comments and look a little bit and find out that the type of DHT sensor that I'm using is a DHT11, so I had to uncomment this line and comment these two. based on what's here. So the library was written for 3 different sensors. You have to tell it exactly which one you have. Read all these comments. If it's done by Adafruit, it's pretty good. The other thing too, by the way, Adafruit will usually have an explanation about the hardware itself in one of these comments in here. I'll drag this down here. It mentioned if you go to the Adafruit learning site, they have an overview and they usually step you through this stuff pretty nicely. They explain all this. I got that out of the comments in these 2 example files that I saw. Okay, I'm going to drag that out of the way again. Reading comments is always suggested. So I'm going to download this file to the Arduino or upload, however you want to see the perspective. That's running, and I'm going to bring up the serial monitor, and we're going to see what prints out here. And the nice thing is, what you can do is go right down through this code, marry the printouts up with what's in here, and you can learn about all these functions that are available via the libraries that you installed, and you can learn stuff as you go through. So that gives you a little bit of an introduction to the complexity. By the way, if I drag this one down here, I thought in one of these library files I saw a convert. On line 68 here, you see float convert C to F float. So there is a function that's already defined by this library to do convert, and I just follow this format, put it in there, and it'll do a conversion for me. If I want to do that conversion, I just get that simple math formula and look at that and do that. But for convenience wise, the library has created that for you. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. If you install a library that someone told you, you can go into the actual files with the detail and look around and see what functions are there. But for the most part, someone who does a nice job with this includes these example files, and the example files are meant to show you all the different functions that the library presents and how to use them. This DHT underscore non-blocking was from a cheap Chinese sort of knockoff. They wrote the thing, and then they have an example file, and it doesn't include any of the examples, and it doesn't help you. That's sometimes why you buy things and pay a little bit more, because someone has beaten a path for you and created things all along. So hopefully that helps. I know it doesn't provide all the detail. You got to have a lot more experience behind your belt until you get there, but at least that helps you find some things and look around and poke around yourself and see what works.